That was hilarious. I didn't think he changed targets. Let me go bring up the comment. I don't have Firefox running. That's crazy. What the heck? Give me a sec here. Yo, what up, Saint? Stupid. Yeah, pretty stupid. But that's the whole point. Sometimes you just want to run as a extremely squishy glass cannon. Tired of this 40 vigor, 60 vigor nonsense. Real players of Elden Ring don't get hit. The true pros of Elden Ring. Okay, the teeth are done. Tongue is done. Wait, is the tongue like seated in the right area? Actually don't know. I haven't checked. I think it is though. Looks about right. It could be a bit lower. That's kind of high for the tongue. No, actually it's fine, I think. You can always adjust it more. Well, actually, we need to, we haven't shaped it to the mouth yet. And there we go. Be a bit longer, actually. Tongue rests, like, right about there, right? Okay, looks fine. Yep. Oh, connection error. Oh, wing spikes. I still need to add those to the base mesh. Yeah, I forgot about that. There we go. So we're merging everything. And also the fingernails. Oh, that reminds me, I have to sculpt the fingernails a bit better. Freaky? Yeah, pretty freaky. That's some pretty freaky shit. Right. So this has to be, the spikes have to be at subdiv 6. And like the areas around the spikes, I feel like they need more work. This is kind of not great. For this to be subdiv level 6, I'm gonna have to change the base topology a bit. Just so it's not overly big. Oh, it's been the whatever, I forgot what's UTV guy. I want to get the other dude over there. Clear out all the enemies in case of invasion. Isn't there always like a dog in here? Yeah, there's a few. Almost failed the parkour. And we'll jump over to this side so I can snipe him when he's climbing up the ladder. Okay, area safe. Ready to go. Where's the host? Is he waiting to get invaded? Oh, you've been. Oh, never mind. I confused the. I think it's the same sound actually. Going through the portal and invading. I think it's the same sound now. Wow. Pretty easy. I don't know why everyone says Elden Ring is a hard game. You just like press one button and everything dies. Just that easy. Okay, let's go work on these spikes. So subdiv 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then let's go freeze and then remove a lot of unnecessary geometry. You have a divot in your head. What do you do? I know exactly what you should do, Saint. Have you ever seen that video where they repair a sink with noodles? You can do the same thing. Just get like a pack of ramen, crush it up a little bit, fill it, eh, put it in the divot in your head, and then just like use like plaster or something like that, and it'll fix it up. You'll have no divot problems after that. Use some sandpaper and polish it so it matches the consistency of your head. The Rock is losing thousands of fans per hour. What is this? How old is The Rock
The
anymore?
Rock just made
Isn't he, like, in
WrestleMania's most
his
disliked
60s now?
video ever, and through some terrible podcast appearances, a completely out of touch fundraiser, and his reputation as a walking, talking advertisement, the world's fakest celebrity has for the first time ever seen a fall in Instagram followers.
Wow.
But the biggest contributor might be his endless list of lies on everything from his movie earnings to fast food consumption. For example, back in 2017, The Rock posted this photo to his Instagram claiming, "I've never been to In-N-Out before," which didn't seem all that serious until roughly 5 years later, when in August 2022 he'd post the following video.
This is the very first time that I have ever tried an In-N-Out burger or In-N-Out fries, anything from In-N-Out for that matter.
He'd therefore claimed for a second time it was my first ever time eating In-N-Out, yet he might not have
Is
been
The Rock
guilty
a
given
lion
he also
handy?
said this.
Now, I've picked up some In-N-Out burger before for some buddies of mine. I've never tried it, so this is a first.
That would be until December 2023, when The Rock claimed for a third time he'd had
Okay, this is ridiculous. Like, I could expect one time it's like you forgot you went to a hamburger place. Like, I could believe that, right? The guy's busy. There's a lot going on.
Oh,
Like, but
Disconnect.
yeah, like the first time I'm like, are people really canceling this guy because he said he went to a hamburger place for the first time 2 times? Like, is this really a big deal? But okay, yeah, now it's happening again. Okay.
my first In-N-Out burger experience, also pretending like he'd never even tried fast food before. I didn't know the lingo, didn't know who to pay, where to pay, didn't know shit, before adding some self-congratulatory comments about leaving a massive tip. This
That's
led
so
to
funny. Why
mainstream
did you lie
media
about
articles
something
and a
like
6-minute
That is weird. Like, I like The Rock. You know, I grew up, you know, it's like, oh, everybody knew The Rock. It's like, he's cool. Like, so I kind of want to defend him, but like, yeah, that's stupid. It's weird. Yeah, it is weird. What else do you lie about? Yeah,
million view Penguin Zero video.
This is the
lying.
third time he's done it. He keeps pretending that he's trying In-N-Out for the first time every couple of years. The other 2 videos are still on your Instagram page.
Forcing The Rock to change.
how do you, maybe it's a joke? I hope he keeps posting it's his first time. I feel like if he posted it's his first time going to In-N-Out Burger, at the 8th or the 9th time, people will start liking it again. Because at that point, it'll just be funny. Yeah. It would be funny.
His description by adding, "My first ever In-N-Out burger experience again. Thanks to the fans who reminded me that I went to In-N-Out years ago and totally forgot about it, but there was another lie that did way more damage."
Yeah,
Black
I don't think that's really a big, am I the only person who thinks that it's kind of ridiculous that people are getting mad that he forgot that he maybe, I just, what the fuck cares? It's ridiculous, but it's just like everything about it's ridiculous. But we're not.
Black Adam was
okay.
released in December 2022,
Yeah.
yet after its theater run ended, Insider published an article reading, "Box office bust, Black Adam faces theatrical losses." The article explained that the film needed to earn around 600 million worldwide to break even, yet box office experts believe Black Adam will stall out with less than 400 million
Minus
globally.
200 million.
Now the movie stands to lose 50 million to 100
Okay,
million
let's
theatrical
reconstruct and hope
run,
that
although
Super Rush doesn't
only
crash.
3 days later, The Rock was saying the opposite. Waited to confirm with financiers before I shared this excellent Black Adam news. Our film will profit between 52 and
Looks
72 million.
Looks
fact.
good, looks
Also
good.
attaching a deadline
It's up to
article which
6.
stated
That it's not necessarily a
Uh,
lie because they were talking
and
about
also
in
the
article
dude clause
it's
and stuff like
theatrical
that.
run, and
What is
he could
this?
be talking about
This doesn't
in
have any
terms of the
subdivs at all. That's
lifespan
not great.
of the film entirely. I don't think this is
To
entirely wrong.
try reconstruct subdiv.
Defend it? No, I
times.
don't.
Okay.
I think it's just a lie. You think it's just a
what is
lie?
this? Subdiv 4. All right.
Okay. Well,
Just divide
let's
that
hear the
twice.
rest of it. Defending Rock? Well, I'm not defending the Rock.
6
I'm just
again.
saying that I don't.
I do the same thing here.
I'm just trying to make sense out of this.
Oh, I already has
Some
6
snarking
substance.
going on
Nice.
out there
It's
that
gonna
Blackadder
merge
is
it.
poised to lose
Oh wait,
50
this is the
M
same
to
one. Okay,
100
never
M,
mind.
and that is simply just not true. The movie is bound to break
Okay.
even and be in the black.
Let's,
Well, it turns out this
group-
article was written
we
with
don't need
false
all those
information
polygroups.
that The Rock had personally
Same with
leaked to the
these.
journalist to make his film seem profitable. After 25 years, we finally found out what The Rock is cooking: the books. But the thing that's really cooking his reputation
It's
is
here.
perhaps the cooking itself, as The Rock's
Wait,
long.
where's these
I will
together?
say that
Save it
I
first.
don't know. Like, I'm not sure. Nobody knows apart from the real financiers that facilitated the film. Yeah, you've got the marketing, the licensing, the
thanks.
merchandise. Black Adam is a superhero movie, and I bet superhero movies make disproportionately more money on advertising products and toys.
Arigato gozaimasu.
I'm not immediately thinking that this guy's a liar, because the first article that disproves it was talking about that in specifically the context of its theatrical
this?
run.
Uh-oh.
So
I hope it was
I'm
at the
not-
highest subdiv. I think it was.
I'm not.
I think the base mesh
I
is
don't
at the
hate him
highest.
yet. I don't hate him yet. It's been 3 minutes. I still don't hate him.
Longest running and most
Constructive.
off-putting lies are on the topic of diet and exercise. For example, The Rock claimed to be eating a suspicious amount of food.
Anywhere between 6 to, well, I would say possible, almost 8,000
Close
calories.
this.
Which was
Holy
quickly shut
shit.
down by Greg Doucette.
sure.
There
Safe.
is no way The Rock burns off enough calories to average 6 to 8,000 calories a day and look like this. If he actually ate those kind of calories, 6 to 8,000 a day, he would be 100 pounds overweight.
Who went through The Rock's entire daily diet before adding this.
He described about 3,000
Okay.
calories, maybe, but where do we
Duplicate
get
these
the
over.
6 to 8 total thousand calories?
The Rock also
Okay,
uploaded
maybe not
a
the
raw uncut leg
eyebrows.
workout, which he called intense
Because
and
the
unlike
geometry
anything
is
I've
gonna be
ever
different,
done,
but
which
the
Greg went on
eyelashes
to criticize.
But look at the
be
grimaces
fine.
on his face. Notice how hard he seems to be pushing. This is 2 plates on each side. A man of the Rock's stature, size, and strength, I would believe that this would be a cakewalk. Many bikini competitors could lift this much weight. And I'm not trying to strength shame him here, but I believe that you're lying when you say that this kicked your ass. There is no way that this was difficult.
Oh.
Highlighting The Rock's most
Where'd
notable
that
lie
come
of
from?
all.
Oh, 6 to
the
8,000 is actually
lightning
easy for most people with
Erdtree
size. I mean, The
dog, right?
Rock is like what, 6'4", right? I mean, like he's not a
Erdtree
huge
burial dog.
guy. You know, for example, like if he was like 7'2", then it would be like, yeah, that's like way different, right? But like 6'3", 6'4" is really not that much different than the average.
There's not a fucking chance in hell he's going. Not a chance in
Oh, is he
hell.
lying
As
about
big
the
as The Rock
steroids?
is,
On the topic of steroids, Johnson has said he
Rot
uses
breath. Commonizer. I think Commonizer does a little bit more damage.
I don't know why they can't just say this shit. Just say you did steroids. Yeah, there you go, right? Yes. Holy shit, it's not hard, man.
he was 18.
Oh, it's I
At
Love
the
Bacon.
College.
Probably
Sure,
didn't
you
that
get a lot of
before.
people out there who will suspect and say shit. They want to negate the hard work you put in. Although it's strange to see him only getting bigger, despite now being into his 50s.
So that's him at 35. This is him at 51. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think he's probably doing steroids. Yeah, I mean, this seems like a steroid situation to me. It's a bad picture. Yeah, no doubt that's a bad picture. And this is him right after a workout, so he's going to look as big as possible. Yeah, there's probably a bit of a difference, but still, man. Still.
Eddie Hall gave his voice on what Dwayne might be using.
I would believe that The Rock would be on TRT, which is testosterone replacement therapy. A very good thing to do. It's actually very good for you, very healthy for you.
While Joe
Yeah,
Rogan
I think that makes sense, and I think
wonder if
that
I can
will
just, like,
100%,
use
right?
the-
because like he's also 52.
The baked
So
human
like generally
eyebrow
guys
eyelashes.
have
And
their
then
testosterone levels
like,
go
I don't
down
have to
over
rebake them.
the years, and
I can just alter
yeah,
the low
I
poly.
mean 52 for sure.
theorized he was probably using
Oh, well.
more.
You can't even get there with HRT. That's not
Wow.
HRT.
which was again echoed by Greg
This should be
Doucette.
done.
Not only do I not think he's natural, I don't think he's on HRT. I think he's on the kitchen sink. Whatever he can take.
Really?
I think he's
That's
on
the
all of it
highest.
and some. You don't get big like that
Subdiv.
into your 50s compared to your 40s and 30s. Like you see some photos
Or
of him in his
is it?
30s, he's way bigger and leaner now.
This has helped him to earn the following title,
The Rock
No,
is
it
the
isn't.
fakest
Okay, let's
celebrity
undo that.
in Hollywood.
and nothing solidified this
Jeez.
harder
Let's
than
go
The Rock's
revert.
recent Joe Rogan episode.
Jesus, man.
Yeah,
And to think all of
Good thing I
this
saved
started
it
because
beforehand.
he lied about going to In-N-Out.
he's
Man.
merged it with the.
I was very hyped for this podcast, but it was honestly quite boring. Rock
They should
unironically
be
has some serious
subdivided one more
politician
time.
traits
This has
with
to be the
how he
highest
takes the
subdiv,
middle
it's not,
road
it's at
and
5.
nods his way through anything potentially controversial,
why is it
Joe
at
would
5?
say. As mentioned, The Rock tiptoed through the entire episode.
You could tell The Rock just did not want to give his opinion on anything,
That's
and
not
he's
good.
walking on eggshells. You know, he's definitely worried about saying anything controversial or getting canceled.
Additionally,
Did I merge
The
it with
Rock
the
avoided
tail? Is that why?
controversy by controlling
And the
every
tail is at
topic,
5?
leading to other comments such as, Rock has asked Joe about 100 questions so far, and I
okay,
don't
we have
think
to
Joe
load
has
an
asked
earlier
Rock a
save
single
then.
one. Joe is doing all the talking about the same old shit, and I'm about to fall asleep. The whole episode just felt kind of weird, not only because of Joe previously calling
Okay,
The
this is
Rock
at
a
6.
steroid
That means
user,
it's
but
definitely the
because The Rock
tail
had also called Joe
that
Rogan
was
out
at fault.
himself. I thought The Rock disowned Joe during the
let's
whole
go
N-word
delete
incident.
this.
Back in
Which one?
2022, when Joe posted this iconic
Append.
video, The Rock stood firmly behind
This
him by
was
writing,
number
"Great
6
stuff here,
subdiv.
brother. Perfectly articulated. Looking forward to coming on one day and breaking out the tequila with you, although his
then-
support was met with backlash. Dear The Rock, you're a hero to many people, and using your platform
Where
to defend Joe
is-
Rogan, a guy that used and laughed about using the N-word dozens of times, is a terrible
let's go
use of your
over
power.
here.
Have you actually listened to this man's many racist statements about black people, causing
Joe Rogan hates black people? Is that true?
So this should be also. Yeah, these two are fine.
I never
This
saw him
plus
say that. What the hell is this guy talking? This guy's fucking crazy. The Rock said he regrets
Down.
endorsing Biden and the media attacked him. Can we please stop? Like, this guy, listen. This guy is not a fucking politician.
What the fuck? Okay, so one of these
This
are like
guy
level.
he was wrestling with other
What?
dudes in spandex.
Why is it subdiv 5 now?
And then he makes movies.
They're both at subdiv 6.
Who the fuck is paying attention to who The Rock endorses?
Okay, that's a bit annoying. Let's not listen to Aspen Gold anymore. He's a bit annoying. A little bit too annoying. The fuck? Why is this at subdiv 5? What the hell? Unable to reconstruct lower subdiv. Okay. Ooh, that is weird. Okay, well, let's freeze subdiv. We'll reduce some of the polys here. Let's go do that again, just with... Well, actually, we can just subdivide this again. One more time. Will be kind of high poly, though. Like, this should be subdiv 6. For some reason, it's added additional polys. What the hell? Oh well, whatever. Delete this. So this is... Wait. It's the wrong one. We gotta append this to this one. Okay, this is subdiv 6, which is good. This should also be subdiv 6. Right. We'll save it. And then we'll merge. It better be subdiv 6 after it merges, otherwise I'm gonna be pissed. We gotta do the same with the tail too. We level up yet? How many levels can we get? Oh! Okay. We get to have the gloves now. Sweet. There we go. Our full kit. Subdiv 5, what the heck? Why is it subdiv 5? And is there any difference from this to... Like, why is it subdiv 5? Is it because there's like too many polys? Is that why? It's also subdiv 5. Subdiv 6. What? So confused. Um... I mean, I guess it's fine. Is it fine? No, it's not fine. We can't... Okay, I'm gonna restart ZBrush. Maybe I just have like too much shit open. Yeah, we definitely need the lowest subdiv on this. Like, at the same time, why is it going down to subdiv 5? So confused. I have to like delete a bunch of lines again now. Look, it's like added extra geometry when I didn't want it to add extra geometry. What? What is going on? Like, this used to be so much lower poly. It's just like did whatever it wanted to do. Can't just go and do what you want, ZBrush. Oh my god. Been summoned.
Hey.
How much do you guys want to bet that this guy's gonna cast Comet Azure and get one shot by just like standing there? I will bet 350. shit, I might die. Or maybe they're just gonna stand back and let me kill the boss for them. In which case, I'll just like stand back and as well. I guess I lost that bet. It's the kind of host that just stands back and lets the co-op kill the boss. I'll just like stand way up here. Well, we'll watch the host die from the boss. It'll be fun. Go, Alexander, you got this. Nothing but 2 mages. Trying to kill. This is how you kill Fire Giant, by standing back and not doing anything. It's okay, host, you got this. You just run up there and hit him with your moon veil. One of us is gonna die first. Probably gonna be you. I have light roll. This mage probably doesn't. Okay, well I'm gonna go do some work then. While we listen to the ambiance of Fire Giant. Courtesy of the excellent sound design of FromSoft. Yeah, I don't even know what the fuck is going on here anymore. What the heck? That's like asymmetrical as well. This is a nightmare. What the heck? Let's go load in earlier. So maybe this. We'll get the, okay, earlier than this actually. We'll go get the HP 2. No, maybe not this. It has to be earlier than this. Go get this one. This is the one with all the stuff in it. Okay. And this. And here are the claws. We'll delete these. Wait, these are the new ones. We want those. Delete this. Start over with geometry, construct subdiv, maybe. Okay, so this is one. Okay, good. We have one subdiv here. Here's the claws. Let's go try reconstructing as well. Okay. That was the problem, I think. Let's duplicate this. This will be our projection. Yeah, we'll use this for projection. This one also duplicate. also be projection. I'll merge these. So these are high poly projection mesh. This will be our low poly. Yeah. And then, sounds like I got sent home. Well, I mean, I guess all I gotta say is get good. Maybe try attacking the boss instead of letting the co-op do everything. Then we'll divide this by 6. We'll divide by like 4 for now, and then project onto the high poly base. Turn off solo mode. Subtool project. Project all. Okay. That should be good. And then we can just like divide it 2 more times and then save it, and then we'll merge it to... Oh, we got summoned. Hey, it's Geralt of Rivia. That's actually a really good Geralt face they've made.
Hey!
Oh, I missed. Oh my god, no! What are you doing? Well. Okay. I think we saved it, yeah? Wait. Save as? Okay, I guess we didn't save it yet. Infested, vampires. Okay, we'll save it again. And now, make sure this is also at the highest subdiv. Number 6. This is also number 6. We'll merge this together. And hope that it keeps its subdivision levels. As it should. I don't know why it downgraded to subdiv 5 after I merged when they were both at 6. What was that? Unable to reconstruct lower subdiv level. Operation cancelled. Maybe I'm going about this the wrong way. Is there a way to bake? Because the only reason why I want to merge these meshes is because in Substance Painter, open that up. We need like mesh matching. Like the names of the mesh need to match. have like a group of high poly meshes instead of them all being merged. You think you'd be able to do that? Okay, well, I'll think about it. I don't know what's going on. Either way, I still need to do the retopo on the teeth. So go ahead and do that. Also the tongue, because I changed up the tongue a little bit. Do it twice. Whoa, where'd it go? What is going on? Now it's like inverted again. I've had this issue before. Let's just load tool then. I don't want to go through everything and like invert meshes. That's just awful. Whoa, what the hell? Okay, let's go restart ZBrush. That is so weird. Decimation, I've never run into that issue before where Decimation Master inverts every single mesh in your subtool. That's like a pretty big bug, I think. Okay. Maybe if we just do this, and then we'll decimate this. Yeah, what the heck? What the heck? It like flips everything upside down and then inverts it. Well, it flips the camera upside down and then inverts the meshes. Like every single mesh here is now inverted. That is so weird. Okay, well, that's fine, I guess. We can just decimate this again. We'll just flip this. Decimate. It does the same shit again. Okay, we now have that. Maybe I shouldn't be, let's go exit. Maybe it just needs more resources or something. Yeah, maybe that was the issue. It's because Elden Ring was in the background. It's like the bugs from Elden Ring copied over. Oh well, I have better things to do than to watch Geralt unalive himself in Elden Ring. Okay, we'll export these. Teeth upper. Tongue. lower. Let's go restart ZBrush. Maybe if we'll try merging now. Maybe all my bugs stem from having Elden Ring in the background. Probably easy anti-cheats, like, oh my god, you're ZBrushing at the same time, can't have that. Okay, let's we can merge these. We'll try at least. While that's merging, let's go re-import the references. Okay. Nope, I'm still at 6, or still at 5. Okay, so maybe we're just gonna have to have like 2 versions. So one that's unmerged with subdiv 6, that'll be like the edit version, and then we'll have a bake version that's subdiv 5. I think that's like the only way to go about this. If that's the case, let's go get the there's like an older version in here with the tail. Which one is it? Is it this one? We'll just have to open all of them, I guess. I forget which one it is. Because I did some edits to the tail spike. I hope I didn't lose it. That said, I didn't do too much work on it, so it's not like a big loss. Huh. Okay, maybe I don't have it in here. Give me a sec. Maybe it's in my quick saves. It's not in here, it's fine, I guess, but would be nice. Looks like I have it in here. Okay, yeah, here's the updated tail. Although it looks like I've merged it already. Okay, we'll delete lower, I guess. Okay. Reconstruct subdiv. Okay. Then we'll append this. Wow. Over to here. Oh, what? Load tool. Okay, so this is going to be the edit copy. Yeah. So edit copies will just be like named normally. Let's go bring in like the tail hair and stuff as well. I think that's basically it. Yeah. This can actually be a little bit straighter. It's a little bit too curved, the blade, I think. Okay. Go work on the retopo. Symmetry is off, so I might as well just delete half. I should probably like, man, I wonder if I should just like redo the topology. Let's not do soft drag. We'll use topology tool and let's make sure that's really fitting now. Oh, we can try wrong warping to Farum Azula. We go and do that. Get the waypoints there. I still don't have the foot of the well, I don't have the Belfries waypoint yet. Heck. Wait, do I even have an enchanted key though? I don't. What do I get another one? Let's go look it up. Wah! Wait, if I don't have the waypoint, that means I probably didn't get the chest up here. Right? No way I didn't. Yeah, there's still one up here. Okay. We're safe. Pretty sure there's only like 3 in the game. There's only 3 Belfries here. What? What are you looking at? You want the Kamehameha? I'll give you the Kamehameha. Fuck you. Oh my god. Seriously? It's gonna spam that shit? I'm gonna die. Ah. Or not. I guess I'm still alive. Dude, the clipping on this tunic just drives me just like it's just so bad. Look at the back. Whenever I'm walking, you see the on the sides of my back there, the shirt is clipping through the fucking tunic. That's so bad because it's like this armor looks good. Well, decent enough, right? But like that is just, oh my god. Like why? Just fix your shit. Stop making stupid shit. Pisses me off. Oh, that might have been a little bit too late. We'll see. You know what? I think I was thinking that like the teeth should be, I shouldn't model the individual gaps in here. Let's go pull up like where is it? Human F1, is this it? Yeah, this one has the teeth in it. How do we hide the how to hide stuff? Can I just like clip in? Yeah, okay. Yeah, like we don't need all these gaps in here. It's just it looks weird. It looks bad too. Like it doesn't bake very well, and also like it's just not necessary. So we'll get rid of the gaps here. You know what? I might actually just like start from scratch. That's probably gonna be the easiest way to do this. Like I'm gonna have to touch up every single polygon anyway, so might as well. And also we don't need it to be so accurate. I think I was just like that's the good thing about doing low polys and retopology, and just like learning texturing in general. I've never really done this. My job for both bare metal and also formerly Path of Exile, right, is just all like high poly stuff, which is a really big detriment to my success as a 3D artist. Hi Dolly Crane, how's it going? So it's really important to learn like everything else that goes with 3D modeling, not just high poly stuff. It's a trap. ZBrush is a trap. Let's see, did we wrong warp successfully? But yeah, like the old low poly, just way too many polys. It's too detailed, too hard to bake. It's not really worth doing. This looks better, I think. This will bake a lot nicer. There should be a gap here though. Yeah, I alt-tabbed a bit too early. Or a bit too late. I'll do that again. Oh my god, I'm gonna die. Oh, or not. You can actually die jumping from the very top there. I've died before. Drop frames? Am I back? Hello, hello? Testing, testing. Looks like I'm back. Stream still seems to be on. My internet ran into a hiccup there. Give me a sec, I got a notification. Is this... Trillian sending me reels. Okay, I'm back. Oh, I made it. Okay. Let's go. First try. Now the question is, should I kill the mobs? I feel like I should kill the mobs along the way. I have high enough damage, and it is pretty risky running past all of them without killing them. Still alive. Ooh, God. What am I doing? Okay. Bit risky. Bit risky, but seems worthwhile. Okay. Watch me kill all these mobs and then I die to the dragon while running. That would be bad. Actually, hold on. I'll wear the assassin's armor. Just like run past all of this. Whoa. Whoa. Okay. We're safe. We're safe. We got the grace. I can die if I want to. I kind of want the thing though. I kind of want the summon pool. Yeah. Ooh, that's gonna be fun to sculpt. Interesting how they did the wings. Like the wings are just like a bunch of panels. I guess that is one way to do wings. Kind of like feathers. They're more like feathers than like leathery wings in the traditional sense. Oh shit. Wow, we got the grace. And that's everything for now. I have to kill the Godskin nobles. But if I do that, I'll lock out of Alexander's quest. I don't really want to do that yet. that. And then like that. Sure, I guess. He needs one more. One more loop slice. It's fine, I guess.
Field and meadow. Off to the copses stalked Jalapeno, and in a copse he buried himself. Forthwith, the seed ceased to yield produce. Oxen, sheep, and men ceased to breed, while even those that had conceived did not bear. Hillsides were bare, trees were bare, and put forth no new branches. Pastures were bare, springs ran dry. A famine arose in the land. Men and gods alike were about to perish of hunger.
While the Egyptians may have celebrated this weakening of their great rival, in Egypt the situation was hardly any better. One text, dated to around the year 1200 BC, is called the Lament to Amun, and it stands as a wail of sorrow in a darkening age.
Come to me, Father Amun. Protect me in this bitter year of confrontation. God shines in the sun, yet he will not shine. Winter crowds hard upon summer. Months happen backwards. Disheveled hours lurch drunken by. Those cut down in high places cry out to you, Amun. These words came on the poisoned air, spoken by herdsmen in fields and marshes, by those who beat clothes on the banks of the river, by district police deserting their precincts, by horned beasts on our burning deserts.
From this period of unrest and the chaos in Egypt's royal court, which lasted for about a century, a military strongman named Setnakhteh would eventually rise to power. He would rule for only 3 years, before dying and passing the throne on to his young son.
She had better looking pants.
This boy was the empire's last hope to turn around its floundering fortunes. And if such a hope was to be sustained, there was only one name he could possibly rule under. His parents would name him after his great predecessor, who had ruled nearly a century before and fought at the Battle of Kadesh.
Hey, these would be
And
the
so
best,
this
but they're
boy
medium load.
would rule as Ramesses III.
Yeah, no, not that.
This new boy king Ramesses was a determined and tenacious ruler, and it's clear that he openly admired and sought to emulate the legendary pharaoh of old. He even went so far as to name all his own sons after the sons of Ramesses II, and also gave them all the same positions in his court. It was clear he wanted to do everything he could to recreate the glory days that had slipped out of Egypt's grasp, as he writes in
Like
one
Elon
of his
Musk.
inscriptions.
Rejoice ye, O Egypt, to the height of heaven, for I am ruler of the south and north upon the throne of Atum. The gods have appointed me to be king over Egypt, to be victor, to expel them for her from the countries. They decreed to me the kingdom while I was a child, and my reign is full of plenty.
Under other circumstances, Ramesses might have been one of Egypt's great rulers. But the entire region was soon to be convulsed in a series of bitter wars. One of the great drivers of these conflicts was the loose collection of peoples that had first appeared in the reign of the pharaoh Merneptah, and who are known as the Sea Peoples. These invaders were now descending on the entire region in ever greater numbers, apparently spurred by widespread crop failures in northern and western Europe. Already powerful trading cities like the port town of Ugarit had been attacked by sea, seemingly by complete surprise, and they were destroyed so thoroughly that they were never reoccupied. The Egyptians' great rivals, the Hittites, were now on the brink of collapse, as trade networks around the region went into freefall. Ramesses remembers this time of strife as these northern invaders descended on the coast.
The northerners in their isles were disturbed, swept away in battle. Not one stood before their lands. From Keta, Karkemish, Arvat, Alassa, they were wasted. They set up a camp in one place in Amor. They desolated his people and his land like that which is not.
When news of the Sea People's attacks came to Ramesses, he would have been pharaoh for about 8 years. He had already repelled 2 further invasions from Libya and must have been rising in confidence. But the news troubled him, and soon he got word
Oh, unable to summon cooperator. Probably pay attention just in case we get invaded. Very likely to get invaded here. Oh, it's Sand Wraith. That sounds familiar. I feel like I've partied with this guy before. Cha-cha. Fine engine. We'll go after this invader. I don't really want to do all of Leyndell, especially if the host isn't fighting. Like, he's just like following us, getting carried.
That the fleet of the Sea Peoples was on the move and were heading to Egypt, as he recounts in the inscription on his mortuary.
Chocho, you hungry?
At
I gotta go feed.
Medinat
I gotta go feed Chocho.
They came with fire prepared before them forward to Egypt. Their main support was Peleset, Theke, Shekelesh, Denyen, and Weshish. Their lands were united, and they laid their hands upon the land as far as the circle of the earth. Their hearts were confident, full of their plans.
Ramesses knew that these attackers would have to be stopped, and he decided that he would make his stand at the mouth of the Nile, the lush, fertile delta. He would have to play to what strengths the Egyptian army still had in this challenging terrain. He decided to lay an ambush and give the Sea Peoples a surprise attack of their own.
Okay, I'm back.
Now, it happened through this god, the Lord of Gods, that I was prepared and armed to trap them like wild fowl. I equipped my frontier at Zai, prepared before them. The chiefs, the captains of infantry, the nobles, I caused to equip the harbor mouths like a strong wall, with warships, galleys, and barges. They were manned completely from bow to stern, with valiant warriors bearing their arms, soldiers of all the choicest of Egypt, being like lions roaring upon the mountaintops. Their horses were quivering in their every limb, ready to crush the countries under their feet.
As the enemy's ships amassed, Ramesses gathered archers on the banks, supported by spearmen and cavalry in their thousands, all concealed in the reeds. The tension must have been tremendous. All the soldiers of the Egyptian army holding their breath and waiting for that first sign of an enemy ship. Then, at last, a sail was sighted. After that came another and another, until the whole fleet of the Sea Peoples was in sight. The Egyptians must have been able to hear the creak of 10,000 oars, the beating of the drums, the shouts of the helmsmen and soldiers. Then, once the Sea People's ships were within range, Ramesses struck. Arrows flew out of the reeds and rained down on the ships. Panicked, the invaders attempted to land on the banks, but as they did, the Egyptian spearmen appeared out of the tree line and met them with a shield wall. While the enemy was held at bay, the Egyptian navy sailed in down the river.
Those who reached my boundary Their heart and their soul are finished forever and ever. As for those who had assembled before them on the sea, the full flame was in their front, before the harbour mouths, and a wall of metal upon the shore surrounded them. They were dragged, overturned, and laid low upon the beach, slain, and made heaps from stern to bow of their galleys, while all their things were cast upon the water. Thus I turned back the waters to remember Egypt, and when they even mention my name in their land, may it consume them with fear.
The pharaoh's plan had worked. The Egyptians were the first people to turn back these seagoing invaders and stop their campaign of destruction. Ramesses' inscription at Medinet Habu ends on the following triumphant note.
Rejoice ye, O Egypt. I have expelled your mourning, which was in your heart, and I have made you dwell in peace. Those whom I have overthrown shall not return.
But despite their victory, the land of the pharaohs now stood alone in a devastated region. Virtually every other society around them had been gutted and reduced to ash. Numerous long-established civilizations, the Mycenaean Greeks, the Hittites, Ugarit, and Babylon, had collapsed, and civil order had given way to chaos. The precarious trade routes on which they had all relied to supply them with bronze and other commodities were now broken, and Egypt's economy went into a steep and unstoppable decline. By the end of this period, which has become known as the Late Bronze Age collapse, Egypt was a shadow of its former self. As other enemies encroached on its borders, Egypt was able to fight them off, but its treasury became so depleted that it never fully recovered its imperial power. The first workers' strike in recorded history happened during the 29th year of Ramses III's reign, when Egypt could no longer provide food rations for its elite artisans, who were constructing the king's tomb in the village of Deir el-Medina. The lack of rations went on so long that the workers eventually marched through the town, shouting the following chant.
We're hungry. There's no more clothing, no more oil, no more fish, no more vegetables. Send word to the pharaoh.
If food was not reaching these crucial workers, we can only imagine the dire situation in the wider kingdom. The dispute dragged on for weeks.
I'll be right back. I gotta go pee. I'm back.
With one leader of the protest even threatening to damage a royal monument if they were not paid. It was a threat that they would never have dared to make unless the authority of the pharaoh was beginning to be seriously undermined. Ramses III ruled for another 2 decades after his battle with the Sea Peoples, for a total reign of 31 years. But by the year 1156 BC, some members of his family were beginning to get impatient. In the Egyptian court, all of the women, the king's wives and mother, and other consorts, all lived together in a large palace complex with its own land. This was convenient for the king, but it could also encourage courtly intrigue. There was a strict hierarchy to the pharaoh's queens, and everyone knew that the children of his main wife were to be his heirs before any others. Some of the women who were lower down on this ladder could at times resort to plotting to improve their stations, and perhaps get their own sons on the throne instead. One of these women was a queen named Tiye. Tiye was a secondary wife of Ramesses, and her son Pentawer was not in line for the throne. In order to remedy this situation, she began a plot that would go down in history as the Harem Conspiracy. Soon, she brought in other members of the king's household, and even high-ranking members of the government, as one later papyrus records.
They are the abomination of the land. The great criminal, who was then chief of the chamber, was in collusion with Tiye and the women of the harem. He had made common cause with them. He had begun to bring out their words to their mothers and their brothers who were there, saying, "Stir up the people, incite rebellion against their lord."
Alarmingly, one of the palace women had written to her brother named Khaem Wasset, a commander of Nubian troops in the south, and gained his support for their plot. Others had even turned to supernatural methods, making wax effigies of the king's bodyguards and laying curses on them to help their scheme. Their plan was clear: to kill Ramesses and install Queen Tiye's son Pentawer as pharaoh. The date they chose to strike was during the annual ceremony known as the Beautiful Festival of the Valley, which was held in Thebes every year at the new moon of the second month of the harvesting season of Shemu. During this festival, which was one of the biggest of the year, the pharaoh would go down to the river in a grand and colourful procession, carrying the statues of the 3 gods of Thebes, Amun, Mut, and Khonsu. He would then board his royal barge and sail with the statues down to the Theban necropolis to visit his grand temple, as one inscription by a Theban priest describes.
We go, giving praise to Amun, kissing the ground before the lords of the gods on his festivals, the first day of Shemu shining, on the day of voyaging to the valley.
Here the citizens would give offerings of food and drink and flowers as the boats sailed on the river with the 3 statues. As the riotous days-long festival progressed, the plotters took advantage of the disruption to make a strike at the king.
Uh-oh.
It was day 15 of Shemu, when the pharaoh was relaxing in the royal harem in the western tower of Medinet Habu, perhaps thinking ahead to
They're
his
gonna
role
get his
in
ass.
the coming festivities, when a group of assassins crept up on him with
Knight of the
knives.
Black Knives.
Their attack was swift and brutal. Modern scanning of Ramesses III's mummy
disconnection.
reveals that his throat was cut right to the bone with a sharp weapon, severing the trachea, esophagus, and major blood vessels. Death would have followed within seconds. Ramesses has no defensive wounds, suggesting that he was caught completely unawares. But, curiously, his big toe was severed at the time of the attack. This seems like an unlikely injury to sustain during a struggle, and studies of his mummy have shown that the embalmers fashioned him a prosthetic toe to take with him into the afterlife. This suggests that the original toe was never recovered, perhaps indicating that someone took it as proof that he was dead, or as a grisly trophy. Ramesses III had saved Egypt from the Sea Peoples, but now he lay dying in a pool of his own blood, betrayed by his own family. But the conspirators' plot would not go as planned. In the aftermath of the bloody assassination, the son of Ramesses III was able to crush the coup and seize the throne. The plotters were all put on trial, as well as any who had heard about the conspiracy but failed to report it. In all, 28 people were executed, and as a final punishment, they were even cruelly renamed after their deaths. The brother of one of the plotters, who had commanded his Nubian troops in the south, was originally named Khaem Waset, a name which meant came from Thebes. But after his execution, he was renamed Binem Waset, or Evil in Thebes. Another's name, Meri Ra, meant beloved of Ra, but he was given the somewhat spiteful new name Mesedzu Ra, or Ra hates him. Although order had been restored to the royal succession, Egypt was in a much reduced state. The death of Ramses was followed by years of bickering among his heirs. 3 of his sons would become king at different times, each feeling the need to memorialize him and shore up their own legitimacy by reigning as Ramesses IV, 6th, and 8th. In fact, the next 8 pharaohs in a row would all be named Ramesses after the slain king. But many of these rulers were ineffectual and reigned for only a few years each. Meanwhile, Egypt was increasingly beset by continuing droughts, lack of seasonal floodwaters.
Meanwhile, the
famines,
normal people get
civil
shit on,
unrest, and official
as
corruption.
usual.
Against this backdrop, by the rule of Ramses XI, a new power had begun to fill the vacuum left by royal authority. These were the high priests of Amun in
Oh,
Thebes.
Chachi, right? Attention. You wanna come up here? Good job.
This priesthood had become
You
not
want
only
cod
very
liver
powerful,
oil supplement?
but
Here you
exceedingly
go.
wealthy.
Give you one.
Through a centuries-long game of acquisition, the Amun priests now controlled 2/3 of all the temple lands in Egypt and 90% of all Egypt's ships, along with mountains of gold. On top of that, they were the chief prophets and interpreters of the god Amun-Ra's will, wielding a great deal of influence over the kings and their decisions. Over the last centuries, they had changed the rules of the priesthood so that they could pass their positions on to their sons, essentially becoming a kind of feudal royalty in the baking hot lands of Upper Egypt. One inscription on the tomb of a high priest named Nebwen-Enef describes the power of this new hereditary role.
You are now High Priest of Amun. His treasury and his granary are under your seal. You are chief executive of his temple, and every foundation of his is under your authority. The House of Hathor, Lady of Dendera, shall now be under the authority of your son, as heir to the offices of your forefathers, the position which you have occupied hitherto.
Soon, the high priests in Thebes became the de facto rulers of Upper Egypt, even having themselves buried in grand tombs and commanding their own armies. In many ways, the pharaoh had become something of an irrelevance. And perhaps for that reason, there would not be a Ramses XII. With the death of Ramses XI, the Egyptian New Kingdom finally fractured. Less than 80 years after the victorious battle with the Sea Peoples, Egypt would never regain its former power. For the next 4 centuries, Egypt's influence would undergo a steady but unstoppable decline. One text written around this time is called The Tale of Wenamun. It describes an Egyptian diplomat who travels to the north to collect some cedar wood as tribute from the Phoenician city of Byblos. But while there, he finds that the name of the pharaoh no longer holds the kind of sway it used to. Wenamun is robbed on his journey and appeals to the ruler of Byblos for help.
That morning when I had risen, I went to where the prince was and said to him, "I've been robbed in your harbor. Now you are the prince of this land. You are the one who controls it. Search for my money." Indeed, the money belongs to Amun-Ra, king of gods, lord of the lands. He said to me, "Are you serious? Are you joking?" "Indeed. I do not understand the demand you make to me."
To make matters worse, the king of Byblos refuses to pay the tribute of cedar wood that the pharaoh demands. Whether this story relates a true event or is simply a piece of literature, historians aren't sure. But either way, it points to the much reduced state of Egypt's standing in the world, something that had clearly become common knowledge. The 21st dynasty that ruled from the northern Nile Delta through much of the 8th century BC
and then
were
we'll
even
redo this as
descended
well.
from Libyan invaders, peoples from along the North African coast to the west. While the earliest of these Libyan pharaohs adopted classical Egyptian names, by the 22nd and 23rd dynasties, they reverted to giving their children more ethnically Libyan names, and even wearing Libyan feathered headdresses to underline their identity. Still, these Libyan kings were an unruly bunch who held close to their old tribal loyalties and were frequently distracted by warring amongst themselves and their own lords and generals. Meanwhile, the high priests of Amun continued to rule southern Egypt from Thebes. But even further to the south, in the lands of Nubia, another power was rising. This was the Nubian kingdom of Kush. As one of the 2 main African kingdoms to the south of Egypt, Kush was located at the 4th cataract of the Nile, around the region of Sudan today. For centuries now, this Nubian kingdom had been crushed beneath the boot of Egypt. Repeated expeditions up the Nile had seen Egyptian armies stamp out any sign of a powerful rival appearing in East Africa. But now, with the new kingdom of Egypt fractured, and the Libyan kings ruling it in the north, fighting amongst themselves.
Give me a sec, I need to go play with Chocho for a bit. He needs the attention. He's demanding attention. You're back. Okay, I'm back.
The Kushites were free to build their own power base. During Egypt's many attempts to invade and hold on to the lands in Nubia, Egypt had left a number of powerful fortresses to the Kushites. One of these had even become the capital of Kush, the city of Napata. But the Egyptians had also left behind something else, that is, their religion. The upper classes in Kush had long adopted Egyptian gods and forms of worship. Kushite rulers even referred to themselves as the son of Amun. When Herodotus travelled down the Nile in the following centuries, he described this region, which he knew as Ethiopia.
Above Elephantine, the country now begins to be inhabited by Ethiopians, and half the people of the island are Ethiopians and half Egyptians.
Oh, it's Sandwraith. Okay. Not this way, I guess. Gotcha, I just gave you a bunch of attention. Oh my god, that was heavy. Let's go this way. Let's go this way, man. It's not worth it. I wonder if I can get like both. Like, doing this. Uh-oh. I should be able to get both of them. There we go. Worth the infinite FP flask for this. They just have so much fucking health. Worth it. Fucking worth. Oh, there's a third one. I forgot. Oh my god. Okay, okay, okay. Cha-cha. Oh, is that Mommy Jojo? I heard her keys. Is she almost home? What the fuck? I can't target lock. Okay. My invader senses are tingling. Like we're gonna get invaded soon. Ah, shit, my fucking sword wasn't on. That sucks. He fell down. Alright. That would have refunded me a shit ton of mana. Oh, this one. Oh. Oh, my sword does so much damage. 48 damage, 24. 53, 24. Ah! Okay, fine. Well, use something that does damage. Cleaning up the sewers. Oh, he fell. Oh, this is the one with the thingamajig, right? Yeah. The one with the thingamajig. Ooh. I still have. Okay, never mind. Oh fuck, I'm gonna die. I died from slugs. From slugs. Back to Fall of the Pharaohs.
On the shores of which dwell nomad Ethiopians. The people of the place
That was
worship
hilarious.
no other
I've
god
never
but
died to
Amen
slugs before.
and Osiris. These they greatly honor, and they have a place of divination sacred to Amun.
While Egypt had stopped building pyramids more than 1,000 years earlier, Kushite kings had taken up the building of pyramids of their own in classic Egyptian style. In some ways, Kush had become more Egyptian than the Egyptians. The kingdom was becoming wealthy too, its economy boosted by the Nubian gold mines it controlled and trade with sub-Saharan Africa. This wealth soon led to a powerful army. One king of Kush named Kashta would seize upon the opportunity that the situation
Kashta of
afforded.
Kush.
While the Libyan kings of Egypt squabbled and fought among themselves, Kashta worked to gain influence over the high priests of Thebes. Eventually, he had his own daughter appointed to the powerful title of God's wife of Amun in the great temple of Thebes. Once she was in that position, she moved to consolidate her power and claimed Thebes and all Upper Egypt for her father's kingdom of Kush. The Libyan kings in the Nile Delta, distracted by their civil wars, did nothing to stop them. Upper Egypt was now ruled by Nubians. When the Kushite king Kashta died, his son Piye inherited what was now the Kushite Empire. Sometime around the 720s BC, King Piye marched his Nubian armies down the Nile and conquered the fractious states of Lower Egypt. Piye was clearly pragmatic in his approach and allowed any local governors to stay in their positions, so long as they swore allegiance to him. A victory stele that he carved records his victories, which he dedicates to the old Egyptian gods.
Hear what I have done in exceeding the ancestors. I am the king, the representation of God, who issued from the womb marked as ruler, who is feared by those greater than he, whose father knew, and whose mother perceived even in the end that he would be ruler. Beloved of the gods, the son of Ra, beloved of Amun.
His son Shebitku solidified these conquests and united Egypt once more. For the next century, Egypt would be ruled by the 25th dynasty, the Nubian pharaohs. Over the decades that followed, these Nubian rulers showed an enthusiastic adoption of Egyptian culture. They used the Egyptian language, gave each other Egyptian names, and worshipped the Egyptian gods with apparent devotion. They even embarked on an enthusiastic program of pyramid building in Nubia, the first that the region had seen in centuries, if nothing quite like on the grand scale of the Old Kingdom. But this flourishing of Egyptian culture would not last long. That's because to the north, a power had finally risen that would eclipse the Egyptian empire for good. That was the empire of Assyria.
This looks so much better. Yeah, if I make this, I don't think that would have turned out very well.
As we saw in our 13th episode, Assyria had arisen in the valley of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in Mesopotamia.
These are kind of hard to like
by the
figure
7th
out,
century
like,
BC,
read
was perhaps the
topology-wise.
most powerful empire on Earth.
Not gonna lie,
They
pretty.
routinely amassed armies of more than
Pretty tough.
100,000 soldiers. And under the reign of the paranoid king Esarhaddon, they were now pressing their power far along the Mediterranean coast. And soon they dreamed of bringing it to the banks of the Nile itself. The Nubian pharaoh who would face them was a man named Taharka. Taharka
I keep thinking
was the
that
fifth
sound is
king
like the
of
summon
Nubian
sound.
25th dynasty, and he was clearly proud of his heritage and his skin color. He made sure that statues he commissioned were carved from hard black granite, polished smooth. He had come to Egypt as a young prince and had been chosen to rule after the death of the previous pharaoh, as he writes in one inscription.
I was brought from Nubia among the royal brothers that His Majesty had brought. As I was with him, he liked me more than all his brothers and his children, so that he distinguished me. I won the heart of all the nobles and was loved by all. It was only after the royal hawk had flown to heaven that I received the crown in Memphis.
Let's do this instead.
Curiously, Taharka was also a believer in the benefits of long-distance running, and insisted that all his soldiers engaged in nighttime marathon practices.
The king himself was on horseback to see his army running when he exercised with them on the desert behind Memphis in the 9th hour of the night. They reach the Great Lake at the hour of sunrise, and they return to the residence in the 3rd hour of the day.
This extreme stamina would serve them well, and he would engage in successful assaults on Libyan positions across the desert and capture territory in Palestine.
Rivers of Blood, Uchikatana.
Hey.
Where are we going? Where are we going? What are we doing? I hate it when hosts just like run through all that, like. Then I have to wait for them to go through the gate. Then, for it to be actually safe for me to go in. Okay, there we go. It's gonna be very sketch. Okay. Is this gonna be one of those hosts that just like waits around for the co-op to fight? I think it's gonna get blended. Yeah. He hasn't hit them once. Oh, okay, there we go. He's gonna die before this thing gets there. I knew it. Fucking knew it. Dude, I hate hosts like that. Just. Oh my god. Why? Why?
Palestine. Throughout his reign, Taharqa was lucky. A series of exceptional Nile floods led to a period of abundant crops. Funds were clearly so forthcoming that he donated large amounts of gold to the Temple of Amun and restored several religious centers, as one of his inscriptions boasts.
As His Majesty is the one who loves the god, he spends the day and lies by night seeking what is useful to the gods, building their temples fallen into decay, giving birth to their structures as in the primeval times, building their storehouses, endowing altars, presenting them with offerings of fine gold, silver, copper. Now, the heart of His Majesty is satisfied with doing what is beneficent to them every day. This land is inundated in his time, as it was in the time of the Lord of all. Every man sleeping until dawn, and never saying, "Oh, I wish I had."
Egypt was now of a size and stability that it hadn't seen since the collapse of the New Kingdom, almost 400 years earlier. It must have looked like the dawn of a new era of prosperity, but this luck was not to last. In the year 674 BC, in Taharqa's 17th year on the throne, news came of a terrifying army approaching from the north. This horde belonged to King Esarhaddon of Assyria. Few foes had ever beaten the Assyrians on the battlefield, and fear must have spread up and down the Nile. But somehow, against the odds, Taharqa was able to repel this force. The later Greek historian Herodotus records a fantastical story in which the invading Assyrian army was attacked by a horde of nighttime pests.
Where the road comes into Egypt, their enemies came. and during the night were overrun by a horde of field mice that gnawed quivers and bows and the handles of shields, with the result that many were killed, fleeing unarmed the next day. For this reason, to this day, a statue to the Egyptian king stands in a temple, with a mouse in his hand.
What exactly this account records is difficult to tell. Perhaps it was an outbreak of plague among the Assyrian army that forced them to return home. Perhaps it was even a daring nighttime ambush by Taharka's men, conditioned as they were to run long distances in the middle of the night, strike and then disappear into the darkness. With their camps smashed and their army in disarray, the Assyrian army would have been pursued by Egyptian chariots right back to their borders. But we may never know. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the Assyrian sources make no mention of what must have been a humiliating defeat. The sting of this embarrassment was clearly sufficient that 3 years later, King Esarhaddon amassed an even larger Assyrian army and marched back to Egypt. This time, there was no standing in its way. The Assyrians flooded into the Nile Delta, and Taharka fled from Memphis and into the south. The Assyrian advance was so speedy that the pharaoh was not able to evacuate his family when he left the city. Esarhaddon's troops took Memphis, and the Assyrian king wrote the following gloating inscription about his victory.
I slew multitudes of his men, and I smote him 5 times with the point of my javelin, with wounds from which there were no recovery. Memphis, his royal city, in half a day, with mines, tunnels, assaults, I besieged, I captured, I destroyed, I devastated, I burned with fire. His queen, his harem, his heir, and the rest of his sons and daughters, his property and his goods, his horses, his cattle, his sheep, in countless numbers, I carried off to Assyria. The root of Cush I tore up out of Egypt, and not one therein escaped to submit to me. Over all of Egypt I appointed new kings, viceroys, governors, commandants, overseers, and scribes. My royal tribute and tax, yearly without ceasing, I imposed upon them.
But if Esarhaddon had hoped to easily absorb Egypt into his empire, he was mistaken. Just a year later, the Nubian king Taharka reappeared in the south, reinforced with troops from the kingdom of Kush. Numerous governors that Esarhaddon had installed immediately reverted their loyalties, and the whole Assyrian conquest looked like it might be undone. Enraged, King Esarhaddon marched back to Egypt to crush this rebel king. But his health failed on the journey, and he died in the city of Haran without reaching Egypt. Esarhaddon's son who took the throne was the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal. Virtually his first act as king was to gather an army and march to the rebellious province of Egypt to finish what his father had started. Ashurbanipal easily overwhelmed the now weakened Egyptian forces, recaptured Memphis, and in 663 BC returned again to crush another round of rebellions. This time he marched south up the Nile River and bore down on the ancient capital of Thebes. By that time, the Nubian king Taharka had died, and his nephew Tantamani sat on the precarious throne of Egypt. Tantamani met the Assyrians in battle, but he was defeated, and with him the last of Egypt's hope would die. The Assyrian army now rounded on the defenseless city of Thebes. Ashurbanipal records what happened next on one carved cylinder.
This city, the whole of it, I conquered it with the help of Ashur and Ishtar. Silver, gold, precious stones, all the wealth of the palace, rich cloth, precious linen, great horses, supervising men and women, 2 obelisks of splendid electrum weighing 2,500 talents. The doors of the temples I tore from their bases and carried them off to Assyria. With this weighty booty, I left Thebes. Against Egypt and Kush, I have lifted my spear and shown my power.
The Assyrian sack of Thebes was the symbolic end of Egyptian power. Though Assyria would not hold Egypt for long, and would itself collapse within only about 50 years, Egyptian esteem would never truly recover. A century later, Egypt was conquered by the Persian Achaemenid Empire, and in 343 BC, it was conquered again by the Macedonian forces of Alexander the Great. When Alexander's empire collapsed, Egypt would be left in the hands of one of his ex-generals, Ptolemy Soter. For the next 3 centuries, Egypt would be ruled by his Greek Ptolemaic dynasty, who spoke Greek and mostly refused to learn the native Egyptian language. These Ptolemies were still in power when the tide of Roman expansion swept across North Africa and finally over Egypt. The last independent ruler of Ptolemaic Egypt had a name that in Greek meant glory of her father, from Kleos meaning glory and Patra meaning father. Her name was Cleopatra. It's unclear if Cleopatra had any Egyptian ancestry, as her mother is unknown, but she did at least make an effort to learn Egyptian, as Plutarch remembers.
It was a pleasure merely to hear the sound of her voice, with which, like an instrument of many strings, she could pass from one language to another, so that there were few of the barbarian nations that she answered by an interpreter. To most of them she spoke herself, as to the Ethiopians, Hebrews, Arabians, Syrians, Parthians, and many others, whose language she had learned, which was all the more surprising because most of the kings, her predecessors, scarcely gave themselves the trouble to acquire the Egyptian tongue.
When Rome finally invaded and occupied Egypt, Cleopatra apparently committed suicide, most likely by drinking poison or scratching herself with a needle dipped in toxin. The more florid and famous rendition of her using a venomous snake to kill herself was suggested by some ancient writers, and whether true or not, has proved irresistible to generations of poets, including, most famously, William Shakespeare. With her death in August of the year 30 BC, the final vestige of independent Egyptian power died too. On the day of her death, Cleopatra stood at the height of more than 3,000 years of Egyptian history. To her, the Great Pyramid of Giza was now more than 2,500 years old, meaning that Cleopatra lived closer to our time than she did to the building of the Great Pyramid, by more than 500 years. As Egypt came under ever more foreign influence, its ancient culture gradually underwent a transformation. Over the following centuries, as the Greek alphabet became more prominent, the knowledge of how to read hieroglyphics was slowly lost, as one medieval Arab visitor records.
I asked why the inscriptions which cover the pyramids and the temples were indecipherable. He answered, "Since the learned men and those who used this writing have disappeared, and Egypt has been occupied by a succession of foreign peoples, the Greek alphabet and writing have prevailed, and thus they lost the understanding of the writing of their ancestors."
The last known hieroglyphic inscription was written in the year 394 AD at the Temple of Philae, built on an island near the cataract of the Nile at Aswan. By then, the now Christianized Roman Empire had banned the worship of pagan gods in Egypt's temples. But this religious site was just outside of Rome's borders, and so worship of the ancient gods continued here, in the last of Egypt's great temples. Here the names of Ra and Ptah, Anubis and Hathor, Amun and Bastet, Seth and Horus would still be spoken and sung, the incense still burned, the cats still fed, the offerings still given. But this island temple was increasingly isolated, surrounded by the crashing waters of a fast-changing world. The last hieroglyphic inscription records the mournful wish of one scribe, named Nesmet-er-Akem, wishing that his inscription would endure forever, just like the carvings of his long-dead ancestors.
Before Mandulis, son of Horus, by the hand of Nesmet-er-Akem, son of Nesmita, the second priest of Isis, for all time and eternity. Words spoken by Mandulis, Lord of the Abaton, great god.
As the last ever inscription of its kind, in some ways he got his wish. But it's likely that by the time he chipped this message into the temple wall, few people alive would know how to read it. As far as we know, the art of the hieroglyph died with him. The temple was finally closed at some point in the 530s by the Byzantine Emperor Justinian, and it was converted into a Christian church to St. Stephen. The age of ancient Egypt had well and truly come to an end. Some 1400 years later, in the year 1818, the Romantic poet Percy Bysshe Shelley would enter into a friendly competition with his friend, the poet Horace Smith. They had both read in a London newspaper about the coming arrival in the British Museum of a remarkable fragment of a statue brought by ship from the Ramesseum Mortuary Temple in Thebes in Upper Egypt. It was the head and torso of a statue of Egypt's greatest pharaoh, the hero of the Battle of Kadesh, Ramesses II. The statue was one of a pair that had stood at the doorway of his temple. European colonial powers had long been hungering after that fragment of statue. Napoleon Bonaparte had even tried to remove it during his time in Egypt in 1798, but he found its bulk of black diorite too heavy to shift. Now, with wooden rollers and hundreds of workmen pulling ropes, the British team hauled the statue to the banks of the Nile, where it was transported down the river and on to London. After reading about this statue, Smith and Shelley agreed to a wager. They would each write a poem inspired by it, and they would base their work on an extract from the writings of the Greek historian Diodorus of Sicily, who had once visited Ramses II's temple in Thebes. Unfortunately for Horace Smith, history has decisively concluded their competition, as his poem is little remembered. But Shelley's poem has become a classic, one of the greatest and most well-known sonnets in the English language. Titled Ozymandias, it is a poem that has come to stand as an emblem of the vainglorious pride of rulers, the inevitable downfall of tyrants, the awe-inspiring power of time, and the transience of all things.
Again.
I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies. whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive stamped on those lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear: My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal
We have another
wreck,
extremely
boundless
passive
and bare,
host, I can already tell.
The lone and level sands stretch far away.
On the tomb wall of a pharaoh Intef of the Middle Kingdom is a piece of literature known as the Harper's Song, written in Egyptian hieroglyphics. It was a song designed to be sung at funerals and is more than 4,200 years old. At the time of writing his poem Ozymandias, Percy Bysshe Shelley could not have known about this piece of ancient literature, since hieroglyphics would not be conclusively deciphered for several more years. But across the gulf of 4 millennia, he and the unknown author of this song both describe a human emotion that is all too familiar. The deep sense of awe and melancholy we feel when we look at ruined places, at the crumbling palaces of long-fallen emperors, at the tombs of kings whose age has passed into dust. As you listen, imagine
Oh wow,
the
I just
vast
rolled right
gulf
into
of
that.
time that separates our world from theirs. Imagine the sadness of watching your language forgotten and your cities crumble. Imagine the tombs of ancient kings lying opened and robbed. The
Okay, I guess I'll
fallen
take care of this one
pillars
first.
of empty temples, half buried in sand,
Nope.
which shift and roll over
died.
the stones as the great disk of the sun sets red and blazing for a final time on the empire of Egypt.
I can already tell like when like the objective will not succeed just by observing behavior.
One generation passes, another stays behind. Such has it been since the men of ancient times. The gods of long ago rest in their pyramids, and yet the great and blessed likewise lie buried in their tombs. Yet those who built great mansions, their places are no more. What has become of them all? I have heard their words retold time and again. But where are their dwellings now? Their walls are in ruins, and their places are no more, like something that has never been. There is no return for them, to explain their present state of being, to say how it is with them, to gentle our hearts, until we make our journey to the place where they have gone. So follow your heart and your happiness. Conduct your affairs on earth as your heart dictates. For that day of mourning will surely come for you.
Okay, this looks good
So
as well.
spend your days joyfully, and do not grow weary of living. No man takes his things with him, and none who go can ever come back again.
Thank you once again for listening to the Fall of Civilizations podcast. I'd like to thank my voice actors for this episode: Alexandra Boulton, Lachlan Lucas, Michael Hadjiantonis, Tom Marshall-Lee, Nick Denton, Peter Walters, Ree Brignall, and Paul Cassell. Readings in Arabic were performed by Nassim El Boujoufi. Readings in Ancient Egyptian were performed by Seknenra, Mohammed Habib. I'd also like to thank my historical advisor for this episode, the Egyptologist Dr. Chris Naunton. A full list of sources can be found in the description below and are publicly available on the show's Patreon page. As some of you may be aware, Fall of Civilizations will soon be available in book form around the world. The book is called Fall of Civilizations, Stories of Greatness and Decline. by
Okay,
me,
we gotta do
Paul
the
Cooper.
tongue now.
It offers the
Should be
definitive
very
version
easy.
of the show, updated, expanded, and with maps and images attached. The book is coming in April of 2024 for UK readers, and later in the year for listeners in the United States. Please head to fallofcivilizations.com to find out more information and for pre-order links. Every pre-order helps boost the book's rankings and supports the show. I love to hear your thoughts and responses on Twitter, so please come and tell me what you thought. You can follow me at Paul MM Cooper. And if you'd like updates about the podcast, announcements about new episodes,
That was
as well as
really
images,
good.
maps,
That was like a
and reading
really good
suggestions,
podcast.
You can follow the podcast at Fall
You
of
should
Civ
listen to
Pod,
more of those.
with underscores separating the words. This podcast can only keep going with the support of our generous subscribers on Patreon. You keep me running, you help me cover my costs, and you help keep the podcast ad-free. You also let me dedicate more time to researching, writing, recording, and editing to get the episodes out to you faster and bring as much life and detail to them as possible. I want to thank all my subscribers for making this happen. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider heading to patreon.com/Fall of Civilizations _podcast, or just Google Fall of Civilizations Patreon. That's PATREON, to contribute something and help keep the podcast running. For now, all the best, and thanks for listening.
Okay. We have the tongue, we have the teeth. Eyes are done as well. Horns are done, body is done. The only thing that we have left is the eyelashes and eyebrows. So we can hide that. Let's save it. I'm gonna take a short 5-minute or so break here. Get up and stretch a bit, and then I'll finish up the rest of the Ritobu. Where'd your feet? Okay, I'm back. Whoa. We'll listen to the Sumerians. The fall of the first cities.
In the year 1625, an Italian nobleman named Pietro della Valle went on a tour of the Middle East. Della Valle was a prolific traveler. He journeyed around Asia, North Africa, and even India.
Yeah,
He
but
married
just the
an
high
Assyrian
poly better.
Christian princess in Damascus, and now the two of them traveled together, journeying by horseback and camel, accompanied by local guides. At this time, travel in this region couldn't have been more dangerous. The Ottoman and Persian empires were at war, fighting over who would rule in Baghdad. And meanwhile, local bandits took advantage of the chaos to prey on travelers. In those days, lions even
Oh, is there
roamed in
two?
these hills.
Oh, there is two.
Due to these various dangers, Della Valle's guides were constantly on edge. It was June the 18th, 1625, when they spotted a distant group of tribesmen on the horizon. Their guides decided that they might be in danger and began to search for a place to hide. In the distance, they spotted the looming mass of a series of enormous ruins, as Della Valle later wrote in his memoirs.
Being suspicious of some Arabian vagrants or vagabonds, for more security we removed a mile further and took up our station under a little hill near some ruins of buildings, which we saw from far away.
Della Valle's group stayed in those ruins for several nights, while their guides negotiated with the local ruler, asking for safe passage. During the day, under the baking Iraqi sun, Della Valle passed his time by walking among those monumental ruins.
Our removal hence being still deferred, I went in the forenoon to take a more diligent view of the ruins of the above said ancient building. What it had been I could not understand, but I had found it to have been built with very good bricks, most of which were stamped with certain unknown letters which appeared very ancient. I observed that they had been cemented together not with lime, but with bitumen or pitch.
Della Valle was fascinated by the broken fragments of writing that littered the ground of this ruined place. He explored further and wrote down some of the symbols that he saw again and again, stamped into the stones and pieces of clay brick.
Surveying the ruins again, I found on the ground some pieces of black marble, hard and fine, engraven with the same letters as the bricks, which seemed to me to be a kind of seal. Amongst other symbols which I discovered in that short time, two I found in many places. One was like a pyramid, and the other resembled a star of 8 points.
Della Valle and his wife didn't know it, but they had stumbled across the ruins of Ur, a city that had formed the center of one of mankind's first civilizations. This society was known as Sumer, and it was where so much of the world we know today first began. Eventually, negotiations with the local leader fell apart, and Della Valle's guides no longer felt safe camped out there in the ruins.
Oh shit.
They departed in the dead of night
Bloody
and fled
finger
to safety
vanquished.
across the desert. In Della Valle's bags were a few of the clay tablets that he had found scattered around the ruins of Ur. These would be the first examples ever seen in Europe of a language that had been dead and forgotten for thousands of years. All the way home, Della Valle must have turned those tablets over in his hands, gazed at their mysterious ancient symbols. He must have wondered to himself, who had built those enormous mounds of brick and earth, all alone out there in the middle of the desert? What did the symbols on those broken pieces of clay mean? And if such a great city had once stood there, what in all the world could have happened to it? My name's Paul Cooper, and you're listening to the Fall of Civilizations podcast. Each episode, I look at a civilization of the past that rose to glory and then collapsed into the ashes of history. I want to ask, what did they have in common? What led to their fall? And what did it feel like to be a person alive at the time who witnessed the end of their world? In this episode, I want to go back to the very beginning and look at a society that is one of the candidates for the first ever technological human civilization. These are the people of Sumer, who we call the Sumerians. I want to show how, over the course of millennia, the Sumerians would build a society that would form the blueprint for all that followed after. I want to show how they rose to invent writing, mathematics and the wheel, and built the largest cities that humanity had ever seen. And I want to explore what happened to cause their final and devastating collapse. In the highlands of southeastern Turkey, a range of snow-topped limestone peaks rise over 3,000 meters above the flat plains beneath. These are the Taurus Mountains. The mountains of Turkey rise so sharply that rain clouds find it difficult to pass over them. Instead, these clouds pool in their hollows and valleys and give these hills an exceptionally high rate of annual rainfall. In spring and summer, the warm air means that the clouds are even denser, and violent thunderstorms rock these mountains too, echoing off the stones of the valleys.
Cha-cha.
As a result, this is a landscape shaped by water. The steep sides of the Taurus Mountains have been eroded to form streams and waterfalls, while underground rivers have cut into the rock and hollowed out some of the largest caves in Asia. Just as it has shaped the rocks, water has also shaped the beliefs of this region's people. The name of these mountains, Taurus, comes from the Latin word for bull, and the reason for this isn't hard to see. Temples have been unearthed all across these mountains, decorated with terracotta statues of bulls. Since ancient times, the people who lived here worshipped the storm god Teshub. They believed he rode on the back of a bull, perhaps because the sound of the thunderstorms reminded them of the thumping of enormous hooves.
Which these again.
Accompanied with the cracking and booming of these thunderstorms, these heavy spring rains drain into streams and join rivers already flowing down from the snowy mountain passes of Armenia. Soon, these small rivers join together and flow down from the mountains and out onto the wide, flat plains beneath in two great majestic watercourses that run together in near parallel for nearly 2,000 kilometers. The vast floodplain of these rivers is today the land we call Iraq. In Arabic, this area is called Bilad el-Rafidain, the land of the two rivers. And in the West, it has been known since ancient times by its Greek name, combining the words Mesos, or middle, and Potamos, or river. Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers. These two great waterways are known as the Tigris and the Euphrates. For millennia, these rivers have brought life down into the flat floodplain of Iraq, and the source of that life comes from some of the most lifeless things, the rocks of the mountains themselves. Virtually all rocks are held together with tiny flecks of two different materials, called quartz and feldspar.
Yeah, they're pretty long.
Quartz
Decently
is
long
a
enough.
clear, glittering crystal formed from oxygen and silicon, while feldspar is a complex mineral derived from silicon. Together, they make up over 60% of the Earth's crust. And when rivers cut their roots through the mountain gullies and underground streams, their waters wash over the rocks and dissolve their soluble parts. But quartz and feldspar don't dissolve in water, and so these tiny crystals are carried along by the river in a cloud of glittering particles. We call this substance silt. Silt is sometimes known by the more poetic name rock flour, and its particles are smaller than a grain of sand. But these tiny specks can have an enormous impact. Soil with a high silt content tends to hold water better and promotes air circulation. And for this reason, silty soil forms the perfect habitat for most plants. The rivers Tigris and Euphrates transport vast amounts of silt down into the lowlands of Iraq every year. And as a consequence, this flat stretch of otherwise arid desert has become exceptionally fertile. For the history of this region, and the history of all humanity, these tiny particles would prove immensely significant.
Jojo, I gave you attention. Gave you lots of attention.
Other than its rich clay soil, the desert plains of southern Iraq are an inhospitable landscape. In fact, this is perhaps the last place you might expect the first human civilizations to arise. For one thing, the climate of this region is extremely hot and dry. Summer temperatures can reach over 52 degrees centigrade.
You know you can get
or
extensions for
126
your
degrees
eyelashes,
Fahrenheit.
Rusty.
And rainfall is rare, especially in summer. Coupled with the strong winds that blow across these plains, this means that the soil is arid and windswept. And although the seasonal flooding of the rivers brings life to the earth, these floods are also unpredictable. In Egypt, the River Nile flows directly from the Great Lakes of Africa, which act as a stabilizing and regulating force. But the Tigris and Euphrates depend on the amount of rain that fell on the mountains of Turkey, Armenia, and Kurdistan, a quantity that varies greatly from year to year. Years of drought can often be followed by years of devastating floods. And during winter, the whole plain is covered with a thick layer of mud. The region of southern Iraq is also poor in natural resources. The land is essentially nothing but a floodplain made of clay and silt. There are no metals to be mined here, and virtually no stone. And because of all these challenges, it took early humans a long time to reach this hostile environment. In the far prehistoric, archaic humans like Homo erectus vied for survival in the upper reaches of the rivers.
Homo
Archaeologists
erectus.
have found stone axes and other artifacts dating back to nearly 500,000 years ago. But the riverlands of southern Iraq weren't suitable for this hunter-gatherer lifestyle. But about 13,000 years ago, things began to change. The first nomadic hunter-gatherers began to settle down in permanent villages. These early innovators had noticed something interesting. They saw that when they threw away the discarded seeds of edible plants, that same
agriculture.
plant would later sprout out of their rubbish dumps. And this gave them an idea. They realized that if you buried plant seeds in the earth, fed them and watered them, more of the same plants would grow. These were some of the first farmers, and once they found a good patch of land, they quite understandably didn't want to move. They soon built houses nearby, and storehouses to keep food through the winter. They banded together into larger communities in order to divide the labor of farming, and to protect their grain should anyone else try to take it. They learned how to take the clay from the ground and shape it into pots. But they were still limited to areas where the rains were plentiful, to the mountains and the foothills. From about the year 6500 BC, these human settlements began to spread. Century by century, millennium by millennium, they worked their way down the courses of the two great rivers and into the inhospitable land of southern Iraq. Who these people were, what language they spoke, and what they called themselves, we have no idea. Today, we call this stretch of several thousand years the Ubayyad period, named quite arbitrarily after the site where their first artifacts were found. As the Ubayyad people moved down the rivers of Iraq, they began to notice other things too. They noticed that date palms grew in some areas of the river, providing them with a rich and delicious source of calories. They soon found out that these too could be cultivated and planted in orchards. And they also noticed that these palms could provide shade for other more fragile plants, allowing them to be grown too beneath the harsh Iraqi sun. And they made another crucial discovery too. They realized that they didn't have to grow their plants only on the banks of the river. With a bit of hard work, they could dig channels that diverted the life-giving water inland. Now they could grow crops just about anywhere, so long as you could dig a canal long enough. And the people of this region would soon become very good at digging canals. Worked properly in this manner, this landscape could be immensely productive. In their fields, the people here grew wheat, millet and sesame, and in gardens beneath the shade of their date palms, they also grew pomegranates, grapes and figs, as well as chickpeas, lentils, leeks, garlic, cucumbers and watercress. But there was one noticeable patch of green in the midst of all this desert. In the south of Iraq, the rivers Tigris and Euphrates branched into deltas and shallow lakes before they meet the ocean.
Did you know guys
creating
actually have
an
longer
ancient
eyelashes
marsh
than girls?
landscape.
It's true.
Here, dense thickets of reeds grow,
It's based
so
on
tall you
testosterone.
can't see over the tops of them. Populated with buffalo,
The amount of
wild
hair
boar,
growth you have
and
is based on
marshland birds.
testosterone.
Since ancient times, the people here have built their houses out of reeds, binding them together into incredibly strong beams of up to a meter thick, and building large, vaulted houses out of nothing but reeds. And it's in this marshy southern landscape that the greatest Sumerian cities rose.
We'll fix that up in a bit later. Like this needs to be beveled.
Just as Mesopotamia was watered by two great rivers, its lands were also populated by two great peoples. These were the people of Sumer and the people of Akkad. Over the course of their history, the Sumerians and the Akkadians grew together in such a symbiotic way that it's impossible to tell the story of one without the other. We know a decent amount about the Akkadian people in the north. They spoke a language in the Semitic family, meaning that it's in the same language family as the Aramaic of the Bible, and later Hebrew and Arabic. This language seems to have been indigenous to the region, and it shares grammar and words with many other languages that surrounded it. But the Sumerian people are much more mysterious. In fact, they are such a mystery that they have caused archaeologists to refer to what's called the Sumerian problem.
The more you know.
Sumerians spoke what we call a language isolate. That is, it has no relation to any of the languages around it, and it's essentially in a language family all of its own. Sumerian was so alien to the region that early scholars who discovered its first texts didn't believe it could be a real language at all. They thought it must have been a kind of code used to communicate in secret. This alone has led some historians to ask whether the Sumerians may have arrived in southern Iraq from somewhere else. The Sumerian culture centered on the sea coast of Iraq's far south, and so some have suggested that they may have arrived by boat. Some backing for this theory may come in the writings of Roman historian Flavius Josephus, who wrote down a Babylonian legend that he heard in the 1st century AD. It relates the story of a half-man, half-fish called Oannes, who walked out of the sea and taught the people of Mesopotamia the secrets of culture.
He brought them the knowledge of letters, sciences, and all kinds of techniques. He also taught them how to found cities, build temples, create laws, and measure plots of land. He revealed to them how to work the land and gather fruits.
After teaching mankind all these secrets,
By
Oannes
making their
leaped back
eyelashes
into
longer,
the sea
women
and
became
swims
manlier.
away. It's possible that in this myth,
I guess.
ancient storytellers have preserved some memory of the arrival of the Sumerians. Seems to come from the words that the Sumerians used for their professions.
Am I back?
For more common
Looks
jobs,
like I'm back.
the ones that involved manual labor, the Sumerians used old,
That's weird.
pre-Sumerian words. Meanwhile, they brought new words with them to describe more sophisticated and urban occupations. For instance, the words for scribe and winemaker are both distinctly Sumerian. But others have proposed a more interesting theory, which does seem to solve some of these contradictions. Although it does seem a little far-fetched, I think it is worth mentioning here. The clue to this theory comes
Hey, you're
once
finally
again,
awake.
from mythology.
I don't know what happened. It's just a small hiccup in my connection or something.
The Sumerian version of history was dominated by a devastating event of apocalyptic proportions. And if you were brought up reading Bible stories, you may find it familiar. The Sumerians believed that in a time long before, in the time of their most distant ancestors, a great flood had washed over the world. This same story would later pass on into the legends of the Babylonian Empire, and from there to the Hebrew poets who wrote the first books of the Bible. For this reason, the story of the flood is perhaps the oldest continuously told story, and it's in this legend that the clue to the origin of the Sumerians might lie. The story of the flood is so striking that many historians with varying degrees of credibility have tried to come up with some historical event that may have inspired it. And history is actually full of great inundations. When the last ice age ended around 10,000 BC, global temperatures rose between 4 to 7 degrees over a period of about 5,000 years. Up until that point, Vast ice sheets had covered the land in the north of the planet, reaching as far south as Berlin. But as temperatures rose, these ice caps melted, and their water poured back into the oceans. Global sea levels rose an average of 2.5 centimeters a year, until by the end, the sea had risen an incredible 120 meters, or enough to completely swallow a 30-story building. Around the world, the sea engulfed vast regions of the coast. The land bridge that had once connected Russia and Alaska was submerged, separating Asia and the Americas forever. Low-lying regions of what is now Europe's North Sea flooded, turning Great Britain into an island. And in the Middle East, the effects were felt just as dramatically. During the low sea levels of the Ice Age, the Tigris and Euphrates had flowed for a further 600 kilometers, joining into a single river and meandering along a stretch of low-lying valley wedged between what is now Iran and Saudi Arabia. This grand river would have met the Indian Ocean around the region of Dubai today. Some historians have argued that Neolithic humans may have made their home in this fertile valley, having journeyed down from the mountains of Iran. But as the glaciers melted, the sea advanced, slowly at first, but with an increasing speed. Over the next 5,000 years, the coastline would have moved an average rate of 120 meters a year. That's over a kilometer every 10 years, or 1 meter every 3 days.
I can't actually sculpt because whenever I try to sculpt, Jojo is like nudging my arm.
This event must have been utterly terrifying. The next centuries would see these people driven north by the encroaching waves, which swallowed whole forests and villages. These people would have been pressed into ever denser populations, forced to adapt as they went. They would have been a roving band of refugees, never able to settle anywhere for long before the sea made its next advance. This exodus would have continued until the planet's temperature stabilized, and the seacoast reached its furthest point,
Very demanding.
right around the year 5000 BC, just at the time that Sumerian culture as we know it burst onto the historical stage. So this is a theory that I think deserves some consideration. That as the waves of Semitic-speaking farmers moved down the rivers from the mountains to the north, they met another population coming up from the south, a ravaged and devastated people, speaking a language that had evolved independently, and telling tales of a flood that had drowned the whole world.
Okay, this is probably good enough anyway. I can probably edit it more.
This theory could be
later.
supported by that legend of the amphibious fishman Oannes. Is it possible that the Sumerians came to southern Iraq not by boat, but actually walking out of a land that was now at the bottom of the sea? Another legend, called the myth of Enki and Ninursag, relates a creation story in which the god Enki creates man in a land called Dilmun. Like the Garden of Eden, Dilmun is an earthly paradise.
In Dilmun, the crow does not utter its cry. The lion does not kill. The wolf does not seize the lamb. The wild dog, devourer of kids, is unknown.
Dilmun is thought to have been what is now Bahrain, an island in the middle of the Persian Gulf, that body of water that was once a fertile river valley. All we have on this subject is speculation, and until any further evidence is found, this will remain just a theory. But as a storyteller, I can't help but be drawn to this colourful explanation. When we try to work out the truth of what happened in this incredibly distant past, We are reminded that history is not a rigid set of dates and facts, but a continuing process of inquiry and debate. It can sometimes feel like mapping the surface of a planet in another solar system, or like exploring the dark depths of the deep sea. And all we have to work with are the small spots of light that history provides.
I'm back.
We may never know the truth about where the Sumerians came from, but there is plenty that we do know. The Sumerians referred to themselves as Uksag-Giga, or the black-headed people, and the Akkadians called them Salmat-Kakadi, which meant the same thing in their own language. From carvings that depict Sumerians, we can see how they wore their hair, curly on top and cut short on the sides. Common men wore sheepskin kilts, while the richer people would have worn coloured fabrics spun from wool, decorated with tassels and beads. Among the wealthy, both men and women wore jewellery, anklets, bracelets, necklaces and ear ornaments, made of copper and sometimes gold. Remarkably, we also have a great deal of evidence about Sumerian music. Like everything else, the Sumerians wrote their music down on clay tablets. And we've also discovered other texts that explain how to play it, including how to tune the instruments. And so today, we're able to hear the sounds of the music that once played in the temples and courtyards of cities like Eridu, Ur, and Uruk. These two great peoples, the Semitic Akkadians and the Sumerians, formed a symbiosis over the next centuries that would see their cultures run in parallel, just like their two great rivers. They shared their successes and advances. They shared the cities that were even now growing to become the largest ever
I know,
seen.
right?
But they also
You need
shared
the British
their
accent
failures.
for documentaries.
And as a result,
it's not the
their
same without
fates
it.
became inextricably intertwined. The Sumerians believed that the world was a roughly circular landmass, surrounded on all sides by a huge body of water. They believed that another ocean also lay above their heads, held in place by the solid structure of the sky, which occasionally let some of this water through as rain. They divided water into two types, that of the rain and rivers, sweet water, and that of the sea, bitter water. Sumerians called their homeland Ki Engir, which means the land of the noble lords. To describe the settled societies of the Sumerians and Akkadians, they used the word Kalam, meaning civilized, while they used the word Kur to describe the mountainous zones bordering the plains. Kur in the Sumerian language meant mountain, but it also came to mean rebellious, barbarous, and wild. And at this time, that's how the outside world must have looked to them. To their south and west, the vast desert of Arabia yawned, a rolling sea of sand dunes where nothing grew, home to fierce nomadic tribes. To the north, the rocky Taurus mountains of Turkey and Kurdistan hemmed them in, full of hardy mountain people, while the Zagros mountains of Iran formed the edge of their world to the east. Today, the Arabic word for the region of Upper Mesopotamia still holds within it a sense of this feeling of isolation. They call it El Jazira, meaning the island. But despite the challenges of their landscape, the Sumerians flourished. They had no stone to build with, so instead they learned to make bricks from the river mud, mixing them with straw, gravel, and broken pottery and baking them. With clay, they made everything from pots and plates to sickles and writing tablets. They had no wood, so instead they harvested vast numbers of reeds, tying them together into bundles and plaiting them together into mats. The Sumerians invented or adopted the pottery wheel, the wagon wheel, the plough and the sailboat. Their buildings used complex arches and domes. They worked out how to cast metals, such as copper and later bronze. And the Sumerians were also avid mathematicians. They developed complex systems of measurement, as well as methods for dividing, multiplying, and calculating angles, even writing down the first ever multiplication tables on clay tablets.
They're inflate.
We actually use Sumerian mathematics every day. It was the Sumerians who divided time into the minutes and seconds we still use. And since their number system worked on a base of 60, rather than our system of 10, that's why we have 60 minutes in an hour. The reason for using 60 as the base of a number system is actually quite simple, and it's rooted in the design of our bodies. If you hold your hand out in front of you right now, you'll notice that each of your 4 fingers is divided into 3 segments. It's thought that ancient people would use the thumb of their right hand to tap each segment of the finger, counting up to 12. When they reached 12, they would raise a finger on their left hand, counting up the 12s. And when you had 5 fingers raised on your left hand, you had 60, and you had to start again. The fact that there were 12 cycles of the moon in each year would have confirmed for the Sumerians that this was the number system intended by the gods. The 360 degrees we still use in angle measurement is another relic of this system. Due to this spark of ingenuity, Sumerian society grew at a slow but steady pace. They dug vast networks of irrigation canals that extended the agricultural zone around the rivers and also allowed them to transport goods in canal boats. They built dams to regulate the flow of the rivers and ensure that the spring floods came in a more controlled way. In fact, the Sumerian language has a vast array of words to describe the different kinds of canals, reservoirs, dams and lock gates required to control their water. Gradually, the landscape of southern Iraq transformed from dusty salt flats and marshy swamps to a green patchwork of farmland.
Okay, that works.
Many historians have argued that it was the digging of these canals and watercourses that originally led to the greater social organization we see during the Sumerian period. These extensive systems of water management needed careful planning, engineering expertise, and mathematical calculations. Work teams needed to be organized and paid in food and beer. Foremen and overseers needed to be appointed. And all of this led to a kind of early bureaucracy that gave rise to the first true states. In the 1930s, historian Arnold Toynbee famously argued that it was just these environmental challenges in southern Iraq that created the conditions in which civilization
okay, UV work
could
now.
be
We gotta
created.
do the UVs.
The desiccation of the region impelled the fathers of the Sumeric civilization to come to grips with the jungle swamp of the lower valley of the Tigris and Euphrates, and to transform it. The ordeal through which the fathers of the Sumeric civilization passed is commemorated in Sumeric legend. The slaying of the dragon Tiamat by the god Marduk and the creation of the world out of her mortal remains signifies the subjugation of the primeval wilderness and the creation of the land by the canalization of the waters and the draining of the soil.
The tough semi-desert landscape created what he called a stimulus and response effect in these early people. Toynbee argues that in conditions that are too comfortable, people have little need of increased social organization or technological development. And in conditions that are too harsh, society finds it impossible to develop, He argues that it's in environments such as southern Iraq, where the challenges are numerous but not overwhelming, that a cradle of civilization can occur. Est describes Eridu as the place where the god Enki first decided that a king should rule.
Are we back? Looks like I'm
When
back.
kingship from heaven was lowered, the kingship was in Eridu. In Eridu, Alulim became king. He ruled for 28,800 years. Alangar ruled for 36,000 years.
For obvious reasons, many historians have questioned the reliability of this source. Some have even gone so far as to call it a piece of utter fiction, or a later piece of propaganda, designed to legitimize a usurper to the throne. But the king list does tell us how the Sumerians, of at least one point, thought of their history. And many have argued that Eridu may well have been the world's first city. Eridu was founded around the year 5400 BC. That's nearly 7.5 millennia ago. At this time, populations of woolly mammoths, survivors of the end of the Ice Age, still roamed in remote parts of the world. Eridu was populated by Sumerian speakers, and soon it would make up just one of a whole constellation of small cities that dotted the landscape of southern Iraq. These independent city-states were centered around their temples and ruled by priest kings known as the Ensi. Records show that these Ensi were often assisted by a council of elders, which included both men and women.
They have to redo some of this.
Most of the largest cities in this period were probably no bigger than about 10,000 people. The borders of these city-states were defined by the courses of canals and specially created boundary stones, carved monuments left jutting out of the earth to mark the line between one territory and another. Slowly, these cities began to eclipse the old Ubaid culture that had preceded them. Art and architecture began to take on the form that we would truly call Sumerian, and technology also began to take huge leaps forward. This first period seems to have been a time of relative peace. There's little evidence of organized warfare, or the keeping of professional soldiers in these early cities. Most towns during this period went without walls. One exceptionally ancient Sumerian myth, called the Gifts of Inanna, seems to capture some of the spirit of this period of transition. It describes technology and the refinements of civilization being handed down by Enki, the king of the gods, to his daughter, the goddess Inanna. She later passes them down to the people of Sumer.
Holy Inanna received the craft of the carpenter, the craft of the coppersmith, the craft of the scribe, the craft of the smith, the craft of the leather worker, the craft of the builder, the craft of the reed worker. Holy Inanna received wisdom, the shepherd's hut, the knowledge to pile up glowing charcoals, the sheepfold.
Enki teaches Inanna about family, the proper laws of inheritance, and the art of good judgment. But he also goes on to give her other gifts, some of which show that the darker side of civilization was already beginning to make itself known.
Holy Inanna received deceit and the rebel lands. Holy Inanna received heroism, power, wickedness, the plundering of cities, and the making of lamentations.
It may be that the ancient Sumerians already recognized, right at the dawn of settled human society, what the scholar Walter Benjamin would one day write, that there is no record of civilization that is not at the same time a record of barbarism. And it's true that during this period, the Sumerians began practices that would begin a sorrowful phase of human history. Among them is the use of slave labor. They captured men and women from the hill countries outside their borders and used their labor to fuel the growth of their own economy. In the last episode, I used the metaphor of the death of stars to talk about the life cycle that empires often pass through. But we might also think about the birth of civilizations in this way. The first stars were born from gas clouds, compacted together under the weight of their own gravity, into a spinning ball of matter. Under enough pressure, the temperature of the star's core increased, and finally, nuclear fusion began. The first stars burst into light. When enough people gather together in one place,
I know, right?
that settlement
It's
obtains
hardcore.
a kind of gravity. It draws other people towards it, and as the size of the settlement increases, so does pressure on its various systems. In some cases, this pressure results in those people being fused together into more complex forms of organization. Sometime around the year 3200 BC, the first stars of these human settlements began to burst into light, and that light was the invention of writing. One Sumerian epic poem, called Enmarkar and the Lord of Aratta, gives the first known story about the invention of writing. This poem attributes the invention to a king who has to send so many messages that his messenger can't remember them all.
Because the messenger's mouth was heavy and he couldn't repeat the message, the Lord of Kalaba patted some clay and put words on it like a tablet. Until then, there had been no putting words on clay.
The Sumerians had two things around them in virtually limitless abundance. That's the clay beneath their feet and the reeds that grew in the marshes and along the banks of the rivers. And it's these two resources that combined to form the first human writing. Sumerian scribes would pick up a lump of clay big enough to fit in their hand. In fact, about the size of a modern smartphone. They would take a piece of reed, cut into the shape of a wedge, and print it over and over into the clay to form symbols. The distinctive wedge shapes of the reeds give this form of writing its name. We call it cuneiform. The oldest cuneiform clay tablets come from the city of Uruk and date to the late 4th millennium, probably around the 32nd or 31st centuries. This script originally consisted of pictographs, small pictures designed to depict objects so everyone could understand what they represented. These were first used to keep track of everyday things like rations and supplies, and on some of these very early tablets, you can still see very clearly what they mean. A bowl of food is depicted with an eating mouth next to 6 impressions, and a sheaf of wheat next to 5. This indicates that a worker can exchange this tablet for 6 bowls of food and 5 sheaths of wheat. Scribes would have had to work fast, copying hundreds of documents throughout their day, and slowly this pressure meant that the signs had to become simpler and more abstract. Before long, they no longer looked like the objects they described. After the year 3000, the number of symbols was reduced from around 1500 to about 600. And someone else had the bright idea that each symbol could stand for a certain sound, instead of a whole idea. This was the beginning of the first alphabet. But it meant that now only an educated few...
Guys, I'm gonna take a break here. I'm either gonna end it here, take like a long break, or... Well, I might be back later tonight. But yeah, Trisha has been begging me for attention for like the past 2 hours. So I'll be